Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 138 of the In a Nutshell podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Joe Meade with me. And tonight, Joe, the second episode of the week, so we've got a few headlines, a few game scores to go over, and then maybe a preview of the games coming ahead. And then the mock committee met today, and we'll talk about where the Big Ten teams last there. So, Joe, the leading, the first part of the headline here. He's going to be a coach in the Big Ten by the name of Mick Cronin, the UCLA coach. He was at Cincinnati before. The move out there didn't really make a whole lot of sense. He didn't seem like a good fit. He still doesn't seem like a good fit, although he's had some success. He's had some teams sneak into the tournament, go to the Final Four. And he was in the headlines for a couple of different reasons this week. UCLA is out on their Michigan away trip right now where they're playing your Wolverines. They lost by a lot, and then they went to go play Michigan State. Spoiler alert, that one went in a similar fashion. I think it was like 38-11 or something. But there were two things that happened in this game. First, we're going to show a foul that happened while the game was over. There was, some time left, but I'll show the play first. So Carson Cooper gets what looks like it's going to be a fast break layup. Jemerson with a little bit of a tough foul. There's a little bit of jawing back and forth after the play. And Mick Cronin is not going to wait for the referees to make a call about this flagrant potential foul. And he sends him back to the locker room. So I wanted to get your initial thoughts on what you saw there.
What's interesting, Sean, is he wants guys that fight no matter what, and he even said in his post-game presser, I want guys that are going to play tough, and that's the ultimate sign of a competitor. I don't think Jamerson did anything too malicious here. Now, of course, only only he knows his direct intent, but I didn't think he went low. I certainly don't think Tom Izzo really had much of an issue with it either. He kind of just told his guys to calm down. And you could say, oh, it's because Cronin and Tom are friends, but I really believe Tom's been in this conference long enough and realized, it was probably just like a bang bang play. But Mick Cronin certainly didn't think that. And, without being a psychologist, I could assume, getting mollywopped by two top 10 teams or, I guess they were 15th, but real top 10 teams on the road halfway across the country kind of took its toll on him at that point. And he kind of took out his frustration on Jamerson and tried to send a message, but might have been the wrong one because it was interpreted by not only his team but nationwide.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing there. I don't. His team has dug himself into the hole and he tried to make a play. Like, I don't think there was anything dirty about it. I think it probably like could have not even been a flagrant one. Like
Yeah.
he made a play at the ball, he didn't get the ball. Don't think it was dirty. And Mick obviously, I don't know if he wanted to make a statement, but when you're down in the dumps and you're asking your players to play hard and then they play hard, I don't know if punishing them is the best way of action. And it's a guy who has a great backstory. He didn't really have any offers out of high school. He went to or not UC San Diego, the
Mhm.
Toreros, and
Torrios, yeah.
he worked really hard to play for 3 years there and became a really solid player. Obviously, solid enough to transfer to the Big Ten, and he just gets ejected by his own coach here. And I guess it's funny because the game was over by that point, and I think he was just trying to send a message, Joe. But to me, what do the other players think when they see that? They're definitely not their season's not over, but they're spiraling right now, and they're right on the bubble. And how do you think the locker room responded to this?
We're not going to know, unfortunately, till Saturday. That's the next time we see them. I'm sure that plane ride home was not a fun one. I mean, again, you fly out west and just get your ass kicked. Let's call it what it is. And it kind of just shows the separation. You see it even in the post game presser of the Michigan game. He just goes, "Oh, they have way more talent than us." And I'm not saying he's not wrong.
He
I'm
literally
saying he's
got the
just,
best player in the transfer portal this year.
yeah, he's resigned to the fact that We're just not playing hard enough, and we don't have the talent. And he doesn't say his team can't make a deep run, but he's not necessarily filling me with a lot of confidence if I'm a UCLA fan. And frankly, as a casual observer of his press conferences, and I really want to be a more stringent observer based on the way they've gone. It's pretty ridiculous that this guy puts on. If it's a shtick, it's a really bad shtick to put on. But if this is part of his personality to deal with the media, I'm shocked that in LA, aside from personal relationships, that he's getting this kind of pass for what for really how it's gone on the last 2 years.
And in the post game, this after this game, Joe Mick Cronin said this um, about the question was kind of about Xavier Booker and how he responded to being back at the Ed Zone, but here he is. So not only does he tell the reporter Joe that it's the worst question that he thinks he has ever been asked. Mick Cronin has been doing this a long time. That is like a he's not a first year head coach. He's been doing this for a long time. And then on top of that, as sort of the second guy is starting to ask his question, and they're still kind of sending questions back and forth. He does ask him if he raised his voice, which I mean he did a little bit, but what a total clown show this is from Mick Cronin. Not only has your team gotten embarrassed on the floor against a tournament quality team, but now, I mean, maybe this is taken away from the attention on their performances, but he is never one to let a press conference go, despite the fact that he looks like he wants to be anywhere else. But I mean, what can you do when you see this, Joe, other than laugh?
I mean, it's impossible to not laugh, especially to defend the reporter. He wasn't really raising his voice,
No, he
and he continued
wasn't.
to attack him. And I'm not a
And that's a
journalist,
good
but I
question.
just
No,
yeah.
about Xavier Booker. Like, hey, he got some chants that weren't so nice there. How do you react to it? Oh, I don't care. Come on.
Well, I don't really have an issue with that part of his statement. That's probably the part of his statement I had the least issue with.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
just though, like the complete like I'll put it to you this way. Tons of Big Ten coaches, when you're on the road, you're interviewed by the other reporters,
yeah.
just for reference, Matt Painter, if they lose to Michigan, they beat Michigan. He always does it with the Michigan beat writers. Probably some local guys come from LA. Not a lot of local guys are coming. You have to learn to deal with the other team's media, and Michigan State media, for as much criticism as someone might want to put on them, I personally thought this press conference, everyone was extremely professional, probably more professional than the Michigan beat analysts who were just asking Michigan specific questions. But neither was hostile nor confrontational. And for Mick to take it there is ridiculous. Unless this is some like master move to again get the attention off his team and more onto him and make him the bad guy. Uh, I'm not buying it just based on how he throws guys under the bus and kind of flat out says oh he didn't play well today and blah blah. It's like obviously he didn't play well. Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to keep. There are 17 other coaches in this conference who don't say that stuff. Tom Izzo will say it jokingly. Tom Izzo, I don't think writes a 5 paragraph soliloquy on why Kurt Tank is bad at defense. He'll just make fun of him.
Yeah. So this is obviously a now part of this has come up, Joe, that he does have a buyout for a lot of money. Conspiracy theory time. Is this a play to get that $22 million buyout? Is this a ploy to do that? I mean, somebody would hire him instantly, especially the team that he came from, because they're likely going to have a vacancy this year in Cincinnati. So, do you think he's tired of the West Coast and he wants out? Because this is a
I
good
think
way
he's
to do
tired
it.
of. I think he's tired of the schedule. I
Yeah,
promise you, he's tired of that. My bad news for him is if he wants to go back to Cincinnati,
yeah. Big 12's not so great
the
either.
Big 12's not necessarily you know confined to one area of the country either. So Don't really know where he goes from this. I think a good job for him could be the Providence job potentially. Just going to throw that out there.
Hmm.
But but regardless, Sean, I just think, it's been 2 straight years of this, and UCLA's AD strikes me as Michigan's AD, aka will not do anything unless his hand is forced. So I think the question is who's going to force the AD's hand, or will his hand be forced? That's the only question you should be asking.
Yep, and from a playing point of view, Joe, UCLA is slipping. They are still in my projected bracketology, but they are out of some people's projections. And you know, there's a game that includes UCLA this weekend. That is one that has two teams going in completely opposite directions that we'll preview a little bit later. But in terms of, there was one more. We'll wait till the game. But there was another
Mhm.
person, another coach that commented on this on the travel, um, and I want to. I think it's maybe a little bit of a different tone than what Cronin went with. But Joe, we had a packed Tuesday,
Mhm.
including this Michigan State beatdown of the UCLA Bruins. And it started out in West Lafayette, where your Michigan Wolverines beat Purdue 91-80. The score doesn't really tell the story there. It was, around 15 for most of the second half. But Michigan sort of went in there and led from wire to wire, which puts like I said on the stream, one giant step closer to the Big Ten title. They obviously went up big early and were able to cruise from there without anybody having more than 17 points, which is what Elliot Cadeau had. So obviously a great performance for Michigan, and Purdue never really got the fire lit.
No, Sean, and what's amazing is Michigan did not take care of the ball particularly well, especially in that second half, as Purdue was kind of getting it, down from 16 to 10, and they really never got closer than 10. That's what was most impressive. Sean, I think Matt Painter's game plan here made sense. You want to take away the easy stuff at the rim. Purdue's 15th in, rim defense and like allowing stuff like baskets in the paint, which is shocking with both Oscar Clough and TKR back there. But regardless, I think what really did them in was Oscar Clough having 3 fouls in that first half.
Yep.
Uh, that allowed Michigan just down low to have a little more control than Matt Painter probably would have liked. I think, when you shoot 53% from sorry, when you shoot 57% from three as well, uh, a team like Michigan will beat anyone doing that. But it was really the quality of shots that was most concerning for Purdue. I understand they wanted Michigan to, take shots out of the rim area layups because Coach May doesn't praise paint shots. No, he praises layups and dunks. They took that away for a period of time, but the wide open threes they got off rebounds, they completely eviscerated Purdue on the boards. There's no other way to say it. And that allowed, I think, at least three wide open threes. They didn't respect, Yaxel Lendenberger, Roddy Gale shooting threes, which is fine. But if those guys hit them, you're in for a long night for the Boilermakers. I think Braden Smith in the first half, the 20 points is deceiving because the first half he was
Yeah.
almost a ghost.
Him
He
and
had a few,
Kaufman Wren too. Like TKR had 27, Braden had 20, but they struggled at times.
yeah, and you know the other thing I think is key is Fletcher Lawyer had a really good start to the game. After that, Michigan really didn't let him get any open looks from three. I thought Oscar Clough really had a horrible game overall. 1 of 4, barely plays half the game, and Purdue's depth really got exposed in this game. I think Oscar Meyer held his own pretty well, but from Jacobson to Jakari Harris, not necessarily getting any good looks off either. This is a team, Sean, that is being accused of having a cap ceiling. I personally agree with that.
Yeah. It's clear that Purdue is a step below the top of this sport. And they have now lost three times at Mackey Arena, Joe. And
That's crazy.
they haven't, like, they've lost. The Illinois game was close, but they were losing the entire game there. Um, they lost to Iowa State at home by a significant margin. Illinois, now Michigan, three teams ahead of them. Um, they've had some close calls against teams below them too, but it's clear that this to me just looks like a team that's going to lose in the Sweet 16. When they're better than the other team, they're going to, move the ball nicely and get open shots and make enough. But as soon as a team out there that can stop them, this is going to happen. TKR did get to 27, like I said, 12 of 26 from the field. I thought he was really poor in the first half. He actually missed a couple shots that he should have made. And then, of course, you have, the ones that Michigan actually challenged, too. He got going and he made his free throws. Um, and then Braden Smith too had 0 points in the first half, and he gets to 20, but 10 of those are from the free throw line, 4 of 13 from the field. And then Lawyer, like you said, he had two really big threes. I thought that would have cut it to 8 both times, and both of them were air balls. So felt like maybe Mackey Arena can drag this team back in the game. No, air ball, Michigan ball. They get a neat wide open shot and make it, and then back to 14. Oh well. But
Yeah.
impressive from Michigan here, Joe. Like you said, 14 turnovers. Obviously, the quality of shots they were getting, clearly that cost them points, and Purdue was able to turn it into quite a few on the other end too. But yeah, I think the ceiling is a little bit limited for this Purdue team.
Yep. And one last thing, Sean, it goes to show the difference between Michigan's bench and a lot
Yeah,
of them in the conference. I think the only one
six
that maybe could
for
hold a
7 from
candle,
three for
yeah,
Michigan's bench.
I think the only one who could hold a candle might be Illinois, and that'll be a game we'll preview next week. But let's get into some of these other games if you're ready, Sean.
Yeah, it was a big, meaningful around the bubble and just about everywhere. Joe, is Iowa picked up a victory against Nebraska. This was not, the entertaining game for the neutrals that the one at Mackey Arena was. 57-52 Hawkeyes. Iowa, I wouldn't call this a must win for them. They were certainly on the right side of the bubble, but they were slipping a little bit. But then they pick up what is their signature victory of the season. Bennett starts 25 points, and then defensively, they hold Nebraska to just 5 of 24 from downtown. So, Joe, it's 4 losses in the last 6 games for the Cornhuskers. Obviously, there are some things to worry about there, but this one specifically, like, did they just get Ben McCullum here?
Yeah, in a way, I think they got Ben McCollum. But I
They
also
did
think,
fall for a lot of their traps.
yeah, they fell for a lot of their trap shot. I think Sam Hoiberg, frankly, made this game a lot closer than it should have been, just doing what Sam Hoiberg
Yeah.
does, which is be the most annoying player if you're an opposing fan or team. And I say that in the highest regard possible. Uh, Not a great performance from Nebraska. I thought their offense was rather uncreative, whether that's coaching, whether that's the players improvising on the court. Ben McCullum did what Ben McCullum did, and I think Bennett Sturts and Iowa had some timely rebounding as well that helped them in this game. So, um, my overall impression for Nebraska, I think they're a really good team, but to me, they kind of scream Purdue too. I
Yeah.
think even more so than Purdue, Nebraska could be a one-trick pony if they're not hitting threes. And if they're playing a team that is stout defensively and takes that away, uh, uh, you know, I can't imagine their lack of athleticism is not going to come back to bite them at some point in the first 3 games of the tourney. If they,
I
I'll put it to you this way, they could make the Elite Eight. I would be stunned if they did.
I don't think they're at risk of falling out of the protected seeds, but there is an element of keeping them in the half court when they're on offense
Hmm.
because they don't have the best isolation based players. Like Rinkmast is a, sort of all around five. Like you're not just dumping him into the post
Yeah.
against a big defender. And, Sanford is good off of screens, but he can't really, get his own shot. And then you have Lawrence, who's probably their best one on one player, but still probably better in the catch and shoot. So I just thought that this game was played entirely on Iowa's terms. Like, let's make this thing a slugfest and let's give it to our best player at the end of the shot clock because we think he's better at one on one ISOs than they are. And they ultimately got over the line. They do play again, Joe, and I'm gonna say I think Nebraska crushes them next time in Lincoln at the end
Yeah.
of the season. But
Kind of
like,
like Fred Hoiberg crushed that fan's cell phone.
yeah, that was interesting. Thought that was
And by
fake
the
at
way, I think
first.
most Iowa fans are Team Hoiberg there too. I
Yeah,
think mostly pride themselves on being a classy fan base. That was completely ridiculous for that to happen.
yeah. That was when I first saw that. I thought it was AI. I just like, there's no way he just took that out of his hand, did he? Well, he did, but
The fan
yeah.
deserved it.
Oh,
That's
for
my
sure,
take.
for sure.
Yeah.
The fan comes onto the floor, and I think anything is up for grabs. But yeah, so Iowa gets the victory to push themselves away from the bubble a little bit, and that is cut sort of wraps on Nebraska's chances at the Big Ten title. We had another game that included a bubble team. Joe, Ohio State hosted Wisconsin. perhaps one of the hottest teams in the country. The Buckeyes came in a desperate spot and they delivered. They win this one handily, 86-69. Bruce Thornton leads the way with 27 as predicted, but Devin Royal with 25 is able to make up for just 14 and 14 from Blackwell and Boyd for Michigan, not Michigan, Wisconsin, and Carrington with 20 off the bench. But Ohio State kind of bossed proceedings in this game, Joe. They were able to pull away in the second half, and they pick up the victory against a tournament team that they desperately needed.
What's funny, Shot, is both Purdue, Michigan, and Ohio State had a similar theme in the sense that you feel a run from Wisconsin is inevitable, right? They're down from anywhere 9 to 15, but it just seemed like there's no way. I'm not saying either team is going to win. There's no way
Yeah,
they're going to go away that easily.
and they
It was
kind of
well,
did.
and they did. And
Yeah,
Ohio State kept them there. Devin Royal, I think this was one of his best games as a Buckeye. I think Bruce Thornton, the last two games since John Mobley's been out, has been unstoppable. And to get help from Amari Bynum too, I think that's fantastic. 3 of 4 from three. I think Ohio State also did a great job on the boards too. I think that's where they've struggled against a lot of these upper echelon Big Ten teams. And Sean, correct me if I'm mistaken. I believe this is their second win against the team that's going to be in the field all year.
So if you count, they beat both the California schools at home.
Hmm.
That is, I would say, 1.5 wins against the
Yeah.
field right now.
Yep.
And yes, but the thing with this is because they won by 17, they knocked Wisconsin away from that top 30. I think
Hmm.
Wisconsin's at 35 now in the net, so they still do not have a quad one win, Joe, which is crazy that Wisconsin at home is not a quad one win based on what they've done when they visited arenas. But yes, they still have zero in the quad one win department. But I do think wins against the field is something that is also very important. So I had them come back into the field after this game because I did a projection on Wednesday morning. Now I think based on what happened on Wednesday, they might be just out again, but I'd have to see. But they desperately needed this. They delivered Bruce Thornton very close to a triple double, and you know I did say when we previewed this game, Joe, that forwards can do this to Wisconsin. Like they aren't great one-on-one post defenders. Like Sam Alexis had his best game as an Indiana Hoosier, and then Devin Royal just your forwards are going to get easy shots if they can go one-on-one at all. And Royal 10 of 17, he adds 4 triples in there too, and that that's the secondary player that Ohio State's been looking for all year. So they needed this one badly. The road doesn't get any easier for them. They still need a quad one win. Their next 2 away games are chances for that, and then so 4 of their next 5 games are quad one games. So they're gonna have to win a couple of them to get in.
Yeah. And, the one thing I'll say though is this is probably as good as Ohio State's looked in a really, really long time. I think this is their best performance all year, especially when you factor in that
Definitely.
John Mobley Jr. wasn't playing. So I guess my question for Ohio State is can they parlay this into future good performances? They go to Ohio State and to Iowa. I mean, sorry, to
Michigan
Michigan
State.
State and to Iowa. Picking up one of those would be really, really big for their NCAA tourney hopes.
Yep. And I think they host Purdue, and then they host um, Indiana on the final day. That might be a very important game all of a sudden. All right, Joe. We had Minnesota beat Oregon. That was the only other game on Tuesday, and then Wednesday we had 3 games. One of them we'll talk about here as we'll wrap this. Actually, no, we can preview the later games too. Illinois goes on their LA trip and they take it to USC 101-65. Chad Baker Mazzara, there were some rumors that he might try and come back for this game. He didn't. Elijah Arenas was questionable with flu like symptoms, and it looked like the whole team had flu like symptoms, Joe. This game was over incredibly fast. I think Illinois is just Stojakovic comes back for the Illini. Just a brutal matchup for the Trojans, and unfortunately for them, this thing was over just about after it started. But Illinois picks up a huge margin quad one victory, and they're going to have a chance on Saturday to be the first team to sweep the LA trip. But I thought Illinois would win this game, but not by this much.
No, I thought this game was actually going to be a little competitive, and by 10 minutes in, I figured, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I admittedly at halftime went to bed. I believe the
Well, it
halftime
was 10
score was,
p.m., so that's understandable. 10 p.m. Eastern,
yeah.
that is. Yeah.
No, I mean it was really poor showing from USC start to finish. Yeah, I believe Sean the score at halftime was 54 to it was a
32.
20 yeah, it was a
I think it
20
was up
plus
to
point.
25 at one point in the first
Yeah.
half.
Yeah, so that's really not good from USC, especially from a team that is on the bubble. You'd like to see, I don't want to say more fight, but just a little more better execution, better performance at home, because these opportunities at home are dwindling. They do have Nebraska, but that game matters a lot more than it did 2 days ago now that they lost to Illinois. Uh,
They they don't leave the Pacific time zone, Joe, and they do play UCLA twice. I think it's maybe it was a good thing to hold Baker Mazara for this game. Oregon's coming to town next. They're one of the worst teams in the league. If you can get him back there, I think he might be able to go for the stretch run. But yeah, this it's almost like that they showed up and they knew they had no chance to win and they went through the motions because Illinois, you know, Brad Underwood matchup hunts is for years, but it's not like they were like making it hard for them at all to find the matchup. It's not like they had great ball movement and hit a contested floater with 4 seconds left on the shot clock. Every starter hits double figures, and then two players off the bench hit double figures. That's been their entire rotation. Some games now they're up to 8 because Boswell and Stojakovic are back, but this was something where Brad Underwood and his staff, came in with a game plan, and I don't think they had to make any adjustments. And usually you wait till the second media timeout, start to tweak some things a little bit, but I don't know if they ever got there.
no.
So they will go to, um, or they'll stay in LA and go to UCLA on Saturday. All right, Joe, we've got some games that we're going to preview real quick here, then we're going to
Yep.
get into the mock committee. It's one of the best rivalries in the sport, renewed on Friday at Mackey Arena as Indiana goes to Purdue. The Boilers trying to avenge not only a home loss this week to Michigan, but also a loss to Indiana earlier in the season. It's a tough spot for the Hoosiers to walk into.
I think really tough. And Sean, this is a huge game for Purdue, especially for their top four concerns, which of course gets you to only have to play from Friday to Sunday in the Big Ten tournament. So don't think for other reasons other than Sean just mentioned that this isn't important for the Boilermakers. What Indiana team's going to come out, Sean? That's my main question. I think Purdue. I know they're going to be turned up for this game. I know Braden Smith, especially after his terrible first half performance, Oscar Clough. Those guys are due for a bounce back game. What say you on what Indiana has to do?
Yeah, I think Purdue is doing some things differently than the last time we saw these two teams play in January, where Indiana sort of built up a huge lead and were able to hold on. I don't know if Indiana did anything crazy in that game. I think that I don't think Indiana's a good matchup for Purdue. I think that they don't have somebody to cover Wilkerson. They, you know, is TKR going to run around with Tucker? They went with a smaller defender in the first game, and Tucker got a lot of open shots, and then eventually moved the ball off that. But I think Purdue defensively, it might be a little bit of an issue. I think Indiana's going to get a lot of open shots, and they are on 2 days less rest. Purdue coming into this one off an emotional high. Like I think X's and O's wise, I think Indiana's actually going to get a lot of good shots, but I think Purdue will too. Braden Smith and Lawyer just did not have it at Assembly Hall earlier. And it's probably going to come down to balance. Can Purdue have a balanced attack? Can they score inside? Can they get some triples? Illinois sort of fake blew out Indiana on Sunday, where it ends up being 20. It wasn't really ever close, but it wasn't really ever not close. And the Indiana offense was horrendous in that game. So I think if Indiana's offense can be a little better, I think this might be a game. And Indiana's had some success over Purdue recently, whether it was the last coaching staff or this one. So I think, there is certainly a little bit of a chance for Indiana to go in there and win. I would have been more excited for this one had they beat Michigan, but I don't know if they lose two in a row at home. I don't think they do, but I think Indiana's going to make it
Or
tough.
four on the year, more importantly. That's the big number
Yeah.
that's getting at me.
And I think Indiana's put themselves in a position where they really were able to go into these games at Illinois and at Purdue, um, not really needing to win either one. But man, it would really help because Indiana's in that bottom end of the 9 line, top of the 10 range where if you can get to that by Selection Sunday, you're going to be in the field. But you know, can you? There's only so much you can do at this point in the year with almost 30 data points to move the needle. This certainly would be one of them. Um, so I think it'll be a close game. I don't think Purdue will lose. I think it's probably going to be one where they maybe push away at the 3-quarter mark or something like that. But I think Indiana's going to have a good game plan going in.
Absolutely.
All right, Joe. Saturday, loaded day across really the sport, but more specifically in the Big Ten. Really, I think the only game, USC hosts Oregon, like we said earlier. Does Baker Mazara come back? But it's in the nation's capital, the Edward Jones Capital Showcase, out of conference game for Michigan, coming off that big win at Mackey, going to play number 3 Duke. Probably the game for the number 1 overall seed right now. It doesn't really matter which region it doesn't really matter for regions, right? Because Duke would pick the East, Michigan would pick the Midwest, whether they're 1, 2, or
Hmm.
3. But great opportunity in the middle of conference play here for a huge win, and probably 2 of the 3 best teams in the sport.
And probably the most expensive gate ticket, cheapest one right now is $350. Just pulling it up on my phone. So that is insane for a regular season game.
Yeah.
Getting into it, getting into the game itself, shot. I think this is everyone's going to talk about Cam Boozer versus the Axel Lendeborg. I think it's going to be, can Michigan get to the paint, get to the rim as easily as some of these other better teams Duke has played. UNC, I thought toward the second half did a really good job doing that. Yes, they made a lot of big 3-point shots. I think Michigan's going to have to do that a lot in this game. And then can Duke's bigs, Duke's 3 to 5 have a lot of length, whether that's from the bench or whether that's the starting lineup. That's not something Michigan's had to deal with a lot in the Big Ten. Sean will testify; he watches the league as much as me. That's not in excess here, so I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how Michigan does. Relatively short prep for a team they've never seen, with probably better talent overall, like top level talent as Michigan. To see how they come out of this. 2.5-point favorites right now, but this is going to be a big game to see how Michigan could adjust. I think they're going to have Shire's going to take away their hot sauce, which is, easy layups and dunks. Is he going to make Michigan take more contested threes than Purdue? That's the real question to me. Purdue got the idea of let's make them make a bunch of jump shot threes. They missed the idea on that they had to be contested. I bet Duke does that.
Duke personnel wise is a little bit interesting because I think their whole offense runs through Boozer, and that doesn't usually happen when he's the 5. But I think there is matchups to be won in the other 4 positions for Michigan. Like Duke's guards, Foster, the point guard, is fine. I think Cadeau can outplay him. Cadeau has seen him before, remember, because
Mhm.
Cadeau was a Tar Heel. And then you have Evans at the 2 for Duke, really streaky shooter, can have a great game or can go 0 for the game. And then, at the 3 and the 4, it's Sar and Ngongba, just kind of long, lengthy guys who can step out and hit an open 3. But, I think Michigan has a big advantage in every spot except for the 5. And if Boozer, scores 33 and 14 and, Duke's probably going to win the game, but I think Michigan has to win in the other spots, and I think they can. Duke has never really been playing from behind this year. They have 2 losses, and they were significantly poor finishes from them, where they were in good position to win double digits in the second half, and weren't able to shut the door. So can Michigan hit a couple threes early, put them behind? They've never seen that. So I think Michigan does win this game. But I think it's a good one, and I think it is a really fascinating concept I think we're going to start seeing more of this in the future, Joe. Maybe not a game of this caliber, but we saw Virginia play Ohio State, Louisville play Baylor. I think the weekend after the Super Bowl is the best spot for it because then we're really getting close to the end of the conference season here.
Right.
And I don't know if Michigan coaches are super thrilled about preparing for Duke in the midst of a Big Ten title hunt, but these are fun games that potentially we could see later in Indianapolis.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And probably the other thing, shot is Illinois did this last year. Brad Underwood had rave reviews of it, even though they got absolutely run out of
40
the
pieced,
house.
yeah.
And they had a lot of injuries too. But yeah, I don't know. Michigan's going to be the main guinea pig for this because this is a national t title contending team, odds-on betting favorite. We're going to see what their reviews are toward the end of the year. Let's just put it that way.
And Duke has said they want to do this every year. Now they initiated this, from what I could tell, with
Mhm.
Illinois last year, Michigan this year. Um, you know, who are they going to try this with next year? Like, you got to make the decision probably pretty soon. But it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, I think this is a cool concept, and it's a really interesting place for this game. Last year's Duke Illinois game was at Madison Square Garden. Pretty true neutral, I would say. And this one might be a little bit tilted more towards the Blue Devils, but um, both teams are most likely going to win their leagues, and they've got a chance for a real needle mover here. Now they've played their way into the fact that they probably don't have to win this game to be a 1 seed, like I said. But man, you got the best team from the Big Ten, the best team from the ACC. Um, let's roll it out there and see what happens. Then the other game, Joe, 8 o'clock. That one's 6:30 on ESPN. This
Mhm.
one is 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. It's Illinois going to Pauley Pavilion to play UCLA. That was the game earlier that I referenced. Two teams going in very opposite directions. No team has won both against these LA teams this year. UCLA's only lost one game at home. Um, is this a sleepy end of the road trip spot where an energized UCLA might be able to cause some problems here?
Um, I really don't know, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
Sean. You get Sky Clark back fully healthy for a week now. He cramped up a little in the Michigan to Michigan State game. Pardon me. He's kind of the key here. Can he take away one of Boswell or Wagler? Because it's kind of looks seamless. If you looked at USC game, I know USC didn't necessarily put their best foot forward. If the Illinois offense operates with much disruption, Mick Cronin's going to be really angry because Illinois will 20 bomb them pretty easily. UCLA, if they're going to pride themselves on their defensive identity, this is a game they have to disrupt passes from Keaton Wagler. They have to take away the easy 3-point jumpers that they gave up a lot of the Michigan State on Tuesday. Pretty much they have to do the antithesis of what's been going on during their Michigan trip the last week.
That I think we're going to learn a lot about UCLA this game. Are they going to be scrappier and more desperate? And are their fans going to get into that? And are they going to will themselves across the line here and get to the tournament? Or are they going to wither and go away and hide? Like, they don't even have to win this game for me to be like, all right, this team's probably going to make the tournament. But they're going to have to put up a fight. Like, Illinois, Brad Underwood was asked a question about, all the travel and stuff because they're playing UCLA and what Mick Cronin has said about that. And Brad Underwood had a much different response. He said, there are a lot of harder things to do. Like, we fly on our own team jets and we stay at nice hotels and we get really good food. Like, there's not much to complain about in that department. So I don't know if that was a little bit of a shot at Mick Cronin. I think Brad is definitely smart enough to know what other coaches are saying, and it can be interpreted as that way. But I think we know what we're going to get from Illinois here, Joe. We're going to match up Hunt, and the old UCLA, I think, would welcome that. Like, oh yeah, we'll get into a one-on-one battle, and we can maybe find ourselves in a close game and get across the line. But I don't know about this version. I think there's real ugly scene potential here. If Illinois does to UCLA what they did to USC in that first half, that self ejection might be old news real quick. Um,
Well, and Mick Cronin might self-eject himself. He
yeah,
might. We saw this last year where I believe it was at Maryland, he purposely got double teed up. And God, I mean, frankly, if I was Eric Musselman, I might have done the same thing on Wednesday night based on what Illinois did to them.
and like, what kind of Mick Cronin are we going to see here, Joe? Are we going to see like a I guess he is reserved some of the time, but is he going to be like uplifting to his guys? Like, yeah, that was the worst of it. We've hit rock bottom. Now we're going to come back. Or is he going to be like on them, like on the first media timeout? Is he going to be in the ref's ear immediately? I think he's probably thinking about that more than he probably should, because look, he does things to get a reaction. He knows people talk about it. So needle moving game for UCLA. You know, it's not very often you can get one of the best teams in the country coming to your place after a long week on the road. Like, the players should be fired up. I don't think they get the victory, but I think we come out of it like, you know what, they made it tough on Illinois, and Illinois won a close one.
Yeah, Sean. And my prediction is UCLA. This might be the tipping point in the Mick Cronin era. I don't think UCLA keeps this competitive at all. I think Illinois walks in there and 20 bombs them, and you're going to see quite the press conference. I don't think it's going to be anything insane, but it's just going to continue the downward trend of UCLA because Sean, it's funny. They start off like as a 9 in your bracketology. They've been slowly moving down and down and down, and they got to get one of these Illinois or Nebraska. But just for the, I hate saying buys, but for the mood of the program,
Yeah.
this is what they really have to show out in.
If they get pieced here, they're done.
Yeah.
Like, and Joe, I've pulled up the mock committee bracketology, and this is how we'll wrap it up today. A mock committee of various journalists slash media members met today in Indianapolis at the NCAA headquarters, and basically were given all the information that the actual committee will get, and they made a bracket. Certainly, some things coming out of there. I know Lenardi and Goodman and Norlander were, you know, pretty good with their quick updates here, but this was the actual bracket they come up with. And one tidbit for you, Joe, that I think you might find interesting is that Michigan has made clear that they would prefer Philadelphia over Buffalo in the round of 64 and the round of 32. Buffalo is technically closer, but they want Philly. So they're going to get it because they'll be a 1 or a 2 seed. Um, but that is just a note. They are the number 1 overall seed. I'm going to stop here when I see a Big Ten team. Iowa, a 7 seed in the Michigan region. A little bit higher on Iowa than I am, but of course they just picked up a big victory before my last projection. Wisconsin as an 8 after the big loss to Ohio State. That makes sense. Illinois is a 2 in the West, which means that they're probably, well, I know because they released the seed list, but they're a little bit further back in that 2 line than I had. Indiana as a 9 seed in the East region, where they'll play Texas A&M. We've got Nebraska as a 3 seed in the East region. Let's see here. Michigan State is a 4 in the West. And Purdue is a 2 in the West. So, don't know if anything really stood out to you there, Joe. I know there were some other teams that they really punished because of their recent injuries, but if the real committee is anything like this mock committee, I think it's a good sign for some of the teams on the bubble that they maybe are a little higher than I thought.
Yeah, Sean. And the other thing too is I think this is still going to play out. So anyone who overreacts one way or
Yeah.
another, one thing I will say is you're going to want to do your work in the regular season based on what they considered for the Big Ten tournament last year. I
Yeah.
was thoroughly disappointed in that. So do your work in the next 2 weeks would be my message. Like you
And a
have
lot,
time, but time's running out.
and the president was, Charlie Baker was asked about that today, Joe, and he did reiterate that every single game matters.
Yeah, sure.
But we have evidence to the contrary. And then,
Yeah.
Seth Davis was, standing up for him a little bit there, and like, look, Seth, we have the information. Like, we they vote teams into the bracket. They move them if absolutely necessary. Like if there's a bid steal in the American or something on Sunday, they'll move them. But they don't want to move them because then they got to redo all
No.
the region or the initial sites and all that. They don't want to do that, and they're not going to because the championship game ends like an hour before Selection Sunday. If they really
Yeah.
wanted to do that, every championship game would be on Saturday. But in terms of the Matrix, it's pretty close, Joe. I think Purdue. There was some discussion between Purdue and Florida for the last 2 seed. Nebraska is still on the 3 line. In terms of Texas Tech, they brought them all the way down to a 6 because of JT Toppin's injury, which helps Michigan State and the other teams that I mentioned. And then in terms of Ohio State, I do not believe that they were in, but like they're really close if they're not.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a pretty good look at where the Big Ten teams stand between this mock committee, bracket matrix, my projections, and all that. All right. Well, we will be back probably early next week to recap what is likely to be a pretty awesome weekend of hoops.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
everybody
if
for
it's
tuning in. Or go
consequential,
ahead.
Sean, and if it's consequential beyond Michigan or Illinois, that's probably a really bad thing for teams on the bubble, you know?
So please tune in to the stream. I'll be doing Michigan and Duke on Saturday, and then maybe some other games on Sunday and Monday. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.